Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another English lesson. As we spoke about, this is going to be grammar focused mainly. Now, I don't know what your standard of grammar is right now. Like I said, I don't know what your level of grammar is at right now because a lot of you aren't attending classes. Those of you that are attending the video lectures, those of you that are attending the Google Meets, a lot of you don't talk to me, a lot of you don't interact with me in the chat. So it's very difficult for me to gauge your English level at like a personal level, right? That's why I'm going to focus on this video just on the basics. Like this series of grammar videos that I'm going to be doing is going to start off with the very fundamentals of English grammar, which means nouns, pronouns, adjective, adverbs, all the good stuff. All right. Now, if you feel like insulted in any shape, way, or form by this video, that why is sir making this video for us? Does he really think that we do not know nouns? It's not that I don't think you know nouns, it's that I don't trust you. All right. Because a lot of you, like, you might say, yes, sir, we know this, we know that, and like when I give you to write something, when I give you an assignment to do something, you end up messing up like even the most simplest of stuffs. So let's just focus on the foundations first, all right? Because if you want like a good solid structure of your English language, if you want your English language to be at a level that is proficient, like I'm not looking for fluency yet, all right? Nobody gains fluency in a year in any language. You might get very good at it, you might get even proficient at it, but fluency takes a lot of time, all right? So I want you all to have like a good foundation to build on. All right. If you have a good foundation of like what the proper rules of grammar are, what everything is, what the fundamentals of the language are, it's gonna be much easier for you to move on to the advanced literature, to move on to writing and everything else. Now I know nobody in my class actually wants to be a writer except for like one or two people who I haven't spoken to at all. So if you are on my classroom Discord, please get on it and please start using it as well. Like a lot of you are using it, but some of you still aren't. Like I said, it's really hard for me to find time to talk to all of you personally. That's why I have created that Discord so you can reach out to me 24/7 whenever you want, whenever you have a query or something. And like I said, it's easier for me to organize stuff like group lectures and group discussions and stuff like that. So, like I said, the foundation is very important. Like if you know all of these rules, if you're very familiar with all of these rules, that's why you can move on and do like advanced literature stuff in it as well. I mean, there's not a lot of advanced literature stuff and you're going to be encountering unless and until like you go for an English degree. But otherwise, like even general stuff like writing emails, talking to people, making, projects, reports, and everything else, people do tend to make mistakes. And like I said, a lot of you are making a lot of mistakes. So, like I said, I'll focus on the fundamentals, I'll focus on the basics. Please do not get insulted. Please do not think that this is for babies. Please do not skip the video just because you think you know everything about what I'm talking about. Watch it anyways. Like this is a good reference, this is a good refresher for you to go through it. So let's just focus on nouns for today. As we all know, nouns are naming words. That's the definition we all know. So let's just get into a little bit more detail of what exactly nouns are, how they're used, and the different ways and forms they appear in literature. All right. So I hope you have fun. Pay attention, make notes as always, and bring up like whatever queries and questions you have in the Google lecture. So let's get started, everyone. There are two main types of nouns, common nouns and proper nouns. Common nouns, the definition is given to you in the word itself. It says common. That means we are not going to be talking about anything specific or generic whenever there's common nouns used. Proper nouns, like I said, is the actual name of something, as the actual name of a person, a place, or a thing. So, words for people, places, and things are called common nouns. These common nouns are words for things: ruler, pen, chair, table, hammer, etc., etc. These common nouns are words for animals. Notice that special names for young animals are included, right? As we all know, whenever you're describing the young of any animal, they have like a specific name to describe them. For example, dogs have puppies, cats have kittens, cows have calves, all right? So just look up all of these and see how many do you actually know, how many did you not know, and like, be curious about stuff whenever you're reading. Like I said, the best way to improve your English language is to read the English language, is to expose yourself to more of the English language, and that's why I'm focusing on the fundamentals as well. So those of you that did not know it, well, now you know, all right? Now look at the final section on your screen. These common nouns are words for places. Now, all these places that are described on your screen, just look at it. All of them have like a lowercase letter when they start, right? There's no capitalization here. Also, look at some of the words I don't think that you might not know, like synagogue. Like that's a Jewish word. If you've read about the Holocaust, like that we spoke of, that we've talked about, you should know what a synagogue is. If you don't, look it up in the dictionary. But like you see, these are all generic terms for bank, hotel, library, museum, airport, gas station, etc. Right? Like I said, I'm using the word etc. a lot. Ignore me for that because I'm not going to read the entire thing. So where I say etc., that means like you're supposed to read the rest of it on your own. Please do not get annoyed by me using that word so much. But here, all of these places are generic places, right? These are not specifically defined banks, airports, or schools, or what have you. These are generic terms for these things. That's why we're using common nouns. As we move on, these are the common nouns for people who do certain things. Once again, we are using generic terms here as well because these are common nouns. Singer, manager, sailor, gardener, dancer, secretary, pilot, police officer, and it goes on. Now, these, like I said, these are all generic terms. We're not talking about a specific singer, a specific manager, a specific sailor. That's why we're using the common generic terms. All right. Now we move on to proper nouns. The names of particular people, places, and things are proper nouns. They always begin with a capital letter. Now, this is the biggest clue you can have that something is a proper noun whenever you come upon it, whenever you're reading something, is proper nouns always start with a capital. So make sure to follow this rule whenever you're writing too. Like I said, most of you make these mistakes whenever you're writing. So always capitalize the name of somebody or something specific that you want to tell the reader about. All right, if you're using generic terms, if you're using generic descriptions, you don't have to use capitalization, you don't have to capitalize the noun. But if you're talking about a particular person, place, or a thing, you always have to capitalize it. It doesn't matter if it's formal, informal, whatever you're writing. The first letter of every name is supposed to be capitalized. For example, these people's names are proper nouns: Robin Hood, Florence Nightingale, Muhammad Ali, George Washington, Harry Potter, David Beckham. You see the capitalization, even the first name and last name, because that's their full name. So you'll capitalize both the letters of their first name as last name as well. You can't say Harry Potter with the H capital and the P in small letters because that doesn't work. All right, it changes the meaning of the word. Now we're talking about one Harry Potter, like the specific, the boy who lived. So we'll say Harry Potter with capitalizations in H and capitalization of the P. All right. Names of days, week, and months of the year are also proper nouns. So you'll also be capitalizing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the entire week. And you'll also be capitalizing the name of the months. All right. Now, the names of special days and celebrations are also known as proper nouns. For example, New Year's Day, Veterans Day, Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, Independence Day. All right. Names of famous places, buildings, and monuments are as proper nouns as well. So, for example, the Taj Mahal, the Empire State Building. Now, look at here. All right. Why is the T in the lowercase, but everything else about them is in capitals? Because the is an article. You can't capitalize an article unless and until it's the beginning of a sentence. Now, since this is not the beginning of a sentence, this is just a phrase. So we won't capitalize T. We'll capitalize ESB. So we'll say lowercase the Empire State Building. All right. E is capital, S is capital, B is capital. All right. The Sydney Opera House, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Statue of Liberty. If this was a sentence, the Statue of Liberty was gifted to America by France. Now, there, T would be capital because it's the beginning of a sentence, right? Every sentence begins with a capital letter. That's a hard and fast rule that never changes at all. The only time a sentence doesn't begin with a capital letter is when it is a phrase, which means like it is a part of a different thought, or maybe like when you're using something like a colon or a semicolon. But I'll get into that stuff later because that's more into literary techniques, writing techniques. But just make sure whenever you're writing a phrase, whenever you're writing like describing a famous place, building, or monument, you'll always capitalize all letters of their name. So example, Taj Mahal, the T has to be capital, the M has to be capital. Just remember that, because like I said, I'll go through these things over and over again, because I believe like fundamentals are the way you get better at the English language. All right. So I'll go on about the fundamentals even like after you passed your class 11, even after you passed your class 12. I'll just keep telling you all, always keep going back to your fundamentals, always keep trying to improve your fundamentals, because the better foundation you have, the stronger the structure that you're building on top of it will be. That's just basic logic, right? So names of people who live in a particular country are also proper nouns. For example, Afghanistan, people who live there are called Afghans. People who live in Australia are called Australians. People who live in Samoa are called Samoans. Britain, people who live in the Britain are called British. Pardon me for that little glitch there. People who live in Pakistan are called Pakistanis. And like I said, everything is capitalized. Like I said, country name is also capitalized. The name of the people who live there is also capitalized. The only thing that is not capitalized is the or like the T in the, because of the same reason, because this is a phrase and not a sentence. The Philippines, not a sentence. You can actually capitalize the in the Philippines with, but I'll make sure like if you're capitalizing the T, you have to capitalize the other letter as well. So you can't say capital T and then a lowercase Philippines. You always have to say capital THE, capital PHI whenever you're typing something like that. All right. Lowercase THE and then uppercase Philippines is fine as well. But if you want to like, whenever I said like a sentence starts, you'll always capitalize the T and then you'll also have to capitalize the P as well. All right, now let's talk about nouns and numbers. So nouns can be singular or plural. Like I said, singular means one, plural means multiple. All right, when you're talking about just one thing or a person, use a singular noun. For example, a tent, a park, an idea. Use a plural noun when you're talking about two or more people, places, or things. Just add s to make most nouns plural. For example, a computer turns into computers, a mountain turns into mountains, an envelope turned into envelopes, an insect turns into insects. All right? Now, pay special attention to the note given in your screen right now. Words called articles or determiners are used to signal nouns. Now, what are our three articles? A, and the. All right. Now, other determiners are three biscuits, five eggs, which are counting numbers, all right, which are describing us the exact count of something. So, for example, three biscuits or a packet of biscuits. Now, a packet of biscuits is using an article as a generic term because we're talking about not a specific number of biscuits, but in general, a packet of biscuits. Not a specific packet, just a generic packet. So, we'll use a. But when I say three biscuits or five biscuits or whatever you might want to eat, I'm describing to you a certain specific number. That's why I'm using a number in front of it. So articles are a, and the. The article an is used before nouns that begins with the vowels a, e, I, o, and u. An artist, an eye, an insect, an oven, an umbrella. All right. The article a is used before nouns that begins with other letters called consonants. But some words do not follow these rules. Now, this is very important. A uniform, a user, a, not an is used because the vowel u in these words is pronounced like the word you. All right. Now, most people think that they know how to use articles because they think, all right, we'll have to use an before a, e, I, o, u. And if I look at the first letter of the word, I'll figure it out. Usually that is the case, right? But in a lot of cases, whenever that people gets confused, it's because like the word sounds different or the word starts with a different letter, but it sounds like a vowel. So, for example, like I say, uniform. Now, the word uniform is spelled with a U. Most people would say, I would use an uniform because it's U. No, listen to the word. It starts with a Y-O-U sound. All right? It starts with a Y sound, uniform. It doesn't sound with an sound. Usually, that's how you pronounce U, right? Umbrella, under. Okay? That's how you know whether it's the U sound or the Y sound. So whenever you're confused when if you're supposed to use a vowel or not, just sound the word out in your head. If you sound it out in your head, if you speak it out loud in your head and pay attention to what you're saying in your head, you'll understand it properly. All right, that's one tip I'll give you to improve your English is always try to pronounce things in your head, always try to sound things out in your head, just go through all of these words whenever you're having a difficult word, look up its meaning and try to pronounce it multiple times in your head. So that's when you're writing and you're stuck on a word, when you're stuck on something, go over it in your head, repeat it again and again. And like after you practice this for a while, after you've been reading for a while, your brain automatically remembers what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. Right now, most of you make mistakes because your brain doesn't know what sounds right or what sounds wrong, what's supposed to sound right, what's supposed to sound wrong. That's why you make mistakes. But if you expose yourself to the English language, if you start reading a lot, if you start listening to English music and reading like good English books, watching good English movies, then your brain automatically registers things. All right, this word is supposed to go after this word, that word is supposed to go after that word. And like if you're stuck on something, if you're stuck on like a question in an exam or something, if you keep repeating these things in your head, like if you keep answering, going over your answer in your head in your own voice, your brain will not let you down. It won't let you make a mistake. All right, most of the time, 80% of the time your brain won't let you down. The rest of the 20%, well, that's why we study. All right, so make sure these are the reasons why you use articles. The, as we already know, is about one specific thing. All right, the pizza from someplace else. All right, do you want to eat the pizza? Which pizza? The pizza that is in the fridge. All right, so whenever you're talking about something specific or denoting something specific or talking about something specific, or that is just one, we'll talk about the. All right, the restaurant. Which restaurant? The restaurant on the street. All right. Now, the way I pronounce restaurant might be different than the way you've heard. So make sure you look up the pronunciation because I use a different pronunciation. I use the British pronunciation instead of the American. So that might be confusing for a lot of people. So make sure you pay attention to that. The reason why I've gone on and on about articles so much is because this is the most important thing for your English writing skills and your English speaking skills. Make sure to understand where you're using a, where you're using an, and if you have any problems, bring them up to me during the Google Meet. All right, so let's move on. Now on this screen, these are a couple of rules how to turn singular nouns into plural nouns. So these are all examples. Make sure I'll go through some of them with you, but make sure you go through the rest of them on your own and try to internalize these rules. By internalize these rules, I mean you need to be able to do these things unconsciously or subconsciously. You don't have to think about them. And once you get to a level where you're not thinking about what you're writing, where you're just expressing yourself, whatever is in your head in the perfect English, that's where proficiency comes in. That's where when you're called a proficient English speaker or a writer or whatever it is, when you're doing all of these things subconsciously or unconsciously, where you can turn singular nouns into plural nouns without having to think about, oh, what's the rule? Oh, what do I have to do? So make sure you use this as a reference whenever you're going through anything, whenever you're writing anything. I'll put a link to a book called English for Dummies in the link as well. Please do not feel insulted because the book is called English for Dummies. That's just the brand. The reason why they call those books that is because they are reference materials for people who are not professional English, professionals in English. All right, pardon my language. Like I said, I'm making a lot of mistakes today. I'm very sorry. Recording is very difficult. I do all of this stuff in one take. So, pardon my pronunciation wherever I mess it up. But yeah, so basically, all of these things will become like a part of your internal thought process. And the For Dummies book, like I said, it's a brand and it's explained in a way that even the layperson, somebody who's not an expert in English, who doesn't want to be a professional writer, can also use. So I'll put a link to that in the description. For now, just go over the things that are in the screen. I'll go through these examples with you. For example, nouns that end in s, double s, ch, sh, or x are made plural by adding es to them. So, for example, bus turns into buses, sandwich turns into sandwiches, flash turns into flashes, box turns into boxes, church turns into churches. Most nouns that end in y are made plural by changing the y to I and adding es. So, for example, baby ends with a y, but the plural is babies. All right, babies. Family turns into families, story turns into stories, teddy turns into teddies. All right. Nouns that have a vowel before the y are made plural by simply adding an s in the end. Now, this is an exception to the rule. All right. So, key turns into keys. All right. You're not adding es, you're just adding s. Why? Because it's a vowel before the e. There's a vowel before the e because it's an e, right? Day, same rule, days. Monkey, same rule, monkeys. Tray, same rule, trays. All right, and so on and so forth. Now pay attention to the first part, whatever is on your screen. Many nouns that end in F are made plural by changing the F to we and adding es. Now this is where most people make mistakes. So look at the examples. Half will turn into halves. Leaf will turn into leaves. Shelf will turn into shelves. Wolf will turn into wolves. And thief will turn into thieves. Now pay attention to the way I'm pronouncing these words, right? I'm pronouncing it as halves. I'm not pronouncing it as halves. Remember, like the sounds are very important, the sounds you make, because if you pronounce it as halves, it'll sound as V, right? There's a V sound when I'm pronouncing it. All right, when I say leaves, I'm saying V. When I'm saying wolves, I'm pronouncing the V. I'm not pronouncing wolves. I'm not pronouncing the F. I'm not putting an emphasis on the F. I'm putting an emphasis on the V. So I'll say wolves. That's why you make it clear for somebody who's listening to you. That's how you make your language clearer and more understandable. So the exception is, but some nouns that end in F are made plural simply by adding S. Now, chief will turn into chiefs, roof will turn into roofs, handkerchief will turn into handkerchiefs, cliff will turn into cliffs, and puff will turn into puffs. All right. So like I said, if you read a lot, all of these rules will become internalized in your head. Right now, it might be difficult for you to think, oh my God, do I have to remember everything? No, you don't. Because once you get into the practice, once you start reading a little bit more, all of these things will become a part of you. Like I said, it's muscle memory for your brain. Like I said, if you start doing push-ups now and you can only do 5 push-ups, but if you keep doing push-ups, eventually you can do 50 without even thinking about it, right? It's the same thing with English language. For now, it might be difficult for you to remember even 10 examples or write like properly, even like for a paragraph. But if you keep at it, if you keep doing it, eventually you'll be able to write like 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 words even without thinking about grammar or checking your grammar at all. All right. So some nouns that end in F can be made plural in 2 ways. So the plural of scarf could be scarves or scarves. Both are correct. Hoof can be hoofs or hooves. Both are correct. Dwarf can be dwarfs or dwarves. All right. Wharf can be wharf or wharfs. All right. Make sure you're pronouncing these things correctly. Pronounce the V properly. Pronounce the F properly whenever you're making a difference. Now, the both things are correct. Both examples are correct. And these are the exceptions to the rule that are given on your screen. You can look up more exceptions if you like, and you can bring up whatever issues you might have with me. Just remember, if do not go too deep into it. Why is F changing into V? Why is it this changing into that? Unless and until you are absolutely certain that you want to pursue English as a professional thing, do not go into the whys of things. Otherwise, you'll just get into linguistics, and that's a very different topic entirely. Most nouns that end in FE are made plural by changing the F to V and adding an S. So, for example, knife turns into knives, wife turns into wives, life turns into lives, and midwife turns into midwives. Remember, this is the most important part of this section. Pay attention to the F and the V whenever you're pronouncing it, whether it's pronouncing it out loud or whether it's pronouncing it in your head. Now let's move on to the next section. Most nouns that end in the letter O or the O sound are made plural by adding S. So for example, video turns into videos, hippo turns into hippos, zoo turns into zoos, and kangaroo turns into kangaroos. But the exception to the rule is some nouns like tomato turns into tomatoes, potato turns into potatoes, hero turns into heroes. Example. Like I said, all these rules will only be clear to you once you read a little bit more, once you start reading a little bit more, once the English language is more internalized in your thought processes. You won't have to remember these rules, but you will have to read a lot to internalize them. So let's move on. Some nouns change spelling from the singular form to the plural form. For example, man turns into men, woman turns into women, child turns into children, person turns into people, mouse turns into mice, tooth turns into teeth, food becomes feet, and goose becomes geese. Now, this is very important. Most people pronounce it as man and mean. It's not mean. I've heard people pronounce it mean. I've heard people pronounce it we mean. It's women, it's men. All right. The emphasis is on the E sound, right? That's the sound that has changed from woman or from man. That's the sound that changes, right? The E sound. So it turns into women or it turns into men. All right, mouse turns into mice. Now the note that's giving on your screen is saying, what's the plural of the kind of mouse that you use with a computer? You either say mice or you say mouses. Now this is very important to notice because if you're talking about like the animal, so if I say I have a lot of mice in my house and I'm talking about the animal, I'll use the word mice. I won't say there's a lot of mouses in my house. Sounds weird, right? Doesn't sound proper. So I'll say I have a lot of mice in my house. But if I'm talking about like peripherals, if I'm talking about computers, yeah, I have plenty of gaming mouses. It sounds fine. I can also say I have plenty of gaming mice. Sounds a little bit weird, so I can just say I have plenty of gaming mouses, right? So it depends on the context where you're using it. Like I said, context is very important. And the only way you know and understand and internalize how to use words according to the context is by reading a lot. So the plural form of some nouns is the same as the singular form. For example, sheep will always be sheep. Like the plural of sheep will always be sheep. It will never be sheeps. Like this is one huge mistake a lot of English speakers who come from like having English as their second language make. All right. So if you're not a native English speaker, if you haven't been speaking English as your first language, you will make these mistakes a lot. So sheep will always stay sheep. Deer will always stay deer. Fish will always be fish. Aircraft will always be aircraft. And salmon will always be salmon. That's the way you pronounce it. It's not Salman, all right? Please do not pronounce it Salman. It's salmon. It's a kind of a fish. It's pronounced salmon, all right? The L is silent. The note says on your screen, when you're talking about different kinds of fish, the plural can be fishes, but only in a certain condition. For example, the various fishes of the Indian Ocean. Now, I'm not just talking about one kind of fish or a group of one kind of fish. I'm talking about a multitude of fishes in a particular location. So that's why I'll say the fishes in the Ganga River are in danger of pollution. The fishes in the Yamuna are dying of pollution. Or I can even say the fish in Yamuna River are dying of pollution. Both sentences would be correct depending on the context I use them in. But I will never say sheeps, I will never say deers, I will never say aircrafts, and I will never say salmons. All right. There are some hard and fast rules that remain the same whether the context is different or not. There are some rules that change depending upon the context, which is why we study, which is why we practice, which is why we read, so we don't get confused on these rules. All right. So let's end this section for now, and I'll put forth a little conclusion and we can move on. So I hope everybody understood this lesson. Like I said, this is not the end of the video. I'll continue this in another part. Like I said, it's already pretty long, so I'll just end it now. I'll give you a simple exercise to do at the end, after this section is finished. So just do that in your fair notebooks. Just copy down the exercise, do it in your fair notebook and submit it to me. Just remember to follow the submission format. Make sure to put everything in the subject line, and in the body of the email, just describe whatever you've submitted. All right. So do this exercise if you have the time. If you don't have the time, it's fine, but just let me know whenever you come to class, or just email it to me, or just comment that you don't have time, or whatever it is. Just let me know. People, keep me in the loop, all right? Keep me informed of what is going on with you. Keep me informed about like if you have the time, if you don't have the time, if the video is okay or not, all right, if it was understandable or not. So this was just the first part. I've just talked to you a little bit about nouns, and then we can move on to other things like pronouns as well. So I'll focus on grammar for now, and then we can move on to literature after I've done a little bit of stuff that I really wanted to talk to you guys about. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Do the exercise if you have the time. Let me know if you don't have the time, and let me know whenever you can submit it. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys soon.